to the work that needs to take place to conclude this historic journey to peace. Since the beginning of this year, as our country continues to address the ravages of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen genuine and ongoing consultation between the ABG and the national government. Deputy Speaker, I want to commend the Prime Minister for his leadership in this regard. At no point has he stepped back from his obligations. At no point he refused a meeting with President Torama. And he has ensured that the meetings of the Joint Supervisory Body and the Joint Post-Referendum Consultation take place. As the Prime Minister has noted earlier this year, on the 13th of May 2021, President Torama and himself signed the Sharp Agreement, which seeks to accelerate the transfer of powers to the ABG. Deputy Speaker, this is a long outstanding commitment that is enshrined in our Constitution and which is the cornerstone of the Bougainville peace process. For no matter what form of long-term political settlement may take, we must first ensure that we equip and empower the Bougainville people to manage their own affairs. The drawdown of powers from the national government to the ABG is a critical part of the process. It is the means by which we can transfer functions and build capacity for the ABG to deliver critical services in areas such as health, education, community affairs, and it needs the basis on which the ABG can invest economic enabling institutions that will allow us, the women, men of Bougainville, to rebuild our economy to what it was once. Deputy Speaker, all of this requires a collective effort. It requires the support and will of every single member of this House, of every public servant in Waigani. Change cannot occur without this partnership, and as a Vice Minister and regional member, I stand with my fellow Bougainville members of this House in committing here and now to investing every ounce of energy that I have to meet our goals. The future of our nation and the continuation of peace demands it. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the fact is that over the years, not enough that should have been done has been done. Now, I don't seek to lay blame, and I don't seek to point finger. The past is the past. What is done is done. But what we must do is learn from when mistakes have been made and ensure that they do not occur again. Mr. Speaker, when Ankoba was established in 2007, the then government of our beloved late leader, the Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare, made it clear what needed to be done. His vision was an organization that would coordinate and support all aspects of the peace process. And while Ankoba has done a very good job in maintaining momentum, the time has come for it to transform and to do more. This is why earlier this month, Deputy Speaker, NEC approved for work to commence to repurpose Ankoba so that it can better meet its mandate. This work requires careful consideration of the current Ankoba structure to ensure that it is relevant to our times and that it can support the work that it will now take place in the post-referendum environment. Deputy Speaker, with the support of our international partners, diagnostic review of the Ankoba has begun, and it is at its advanced stage. It is my hope that we can put in place a refined organizational structure for Ankoba in the coming months, together with appropriate institutional arrangements that underpin its mandate to support addressing the complexities of the peace process. To conclude, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I have said, I am optimistic. I believe in transformative change and the capacity of our public servants to step up and deliver on the commitments contained in the Bougainville Peace Agreement. I stand shoulder to shoulder with the Prime Minister and the President, my President, Ismail Torama, in my commitment to reach our goal of sustaining peace and a long-term political settlement. The very future of our nation depends on us reaching our long-term goal. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will not let the people of Bougainville down. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister for Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I too would like to basically make a small contribution on Bougainville. Firstly, at the outset, I must commend and congratulate Prime Minister, the Honourable James Marabe, and of course the President of the Autonomous Region of Bougainville on the outcome that they have progressed to date. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is not an easy challenge, but it must be done with due care. Having said that, I'd like to basically put on record and state that we, Papua New Guinea, owe the biggest debt of gratitude to the people of Bougainville. This is simply because it was the Panguna mine that underpinned Papua New Guinea as a nationhood when it gained independence in 1975. Mr. Deputy Speaker, arising out of the Bougainville crisis, we have learned lessons, but to some extent, we in PNG now are able to realize our potential as landowners. We are able to realize as a nation that we host and own the resources that are hosted in our country. As a consequence, landowners from project areas are now able to come to the negotiation table and ask for better deals. We have seen what's happening now in Pogora, Oktedi, and I am pretty sure that into the future, there will be more of the same, following the same trend that Papua New Guineans will now be able to ask for more. But having said that, we must not forget our historical connections with Bougainville. Apart from Panguna mine, it was Bougainville's public servants, those in the health sector, education, primary industry, who went out far and wide right around the country, that basically helped us not only to be educated, but also to access and benefit from other government services. And therefore it is important that as we deal with this, I'd like to call upon all of us to give the support that is necessary to the process that is in place. Thankfully, what had been the outcome of the successful meeting in Wabek, in the Yenga province, must be pursued with due diligence. There is no time, there is no need, and there is no space for politics to basically involve and divert the attention and the focus that we have to deal with it. We must respect this process, but more so, I would like us to respect the people of Bougainville. It is not easy because the people of Bougainville, who are our people, have sacrificed the lives of 20,000 people. And that this must be done in a way that it is going to find lasting solutions. It is not an easy task. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. What can we do? Going forward, I would like to see that we have got to now start helping the government of the Autonomous Region of Bougainville and restore services. We need to ensure that there are economic activities on the island of Bougainville. Despite the fact that the Panguna mine remained closed, Bougainville had the biggest resource in terms of agriculture. There are plantations after plantations of cacao. there are plantations of coconut which must be restored. We have got to ensure that those plantations are up and going. If it needs be, we need to assist them to put in processes so that they can be able to ensure that those plantations get ongoing and that they can be able to go into production and restore the economy of the autonomous region of Bougainville. We must help them to create a supply chain so that what is produced can reach the markets and so that there can be revenue going back into that region. Infrastructure, and this is important. We have got to make sure that those roads that are now washed away or by impacted as a consequence of climate change, many of those infrastructure are now beyond repair. We have got to ensure that the roads that connect into the outer parts of Bougainville must be repaired. Bougainville is not only the road along the east coast. Not all the population of Bougainville live along the east coast. We have to also look at the west coast, coming into Kunuwa down to Torokina and back into Bana. The roads must be connected. There's got to be accessibility because they've got a lot of good agricultural land of which now must come into production. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one of the gold mines that the people of Bougainville have is the potential for tourism. Bougainville has got some of the most pristine scenery in the world. And that we must, as a government, as part of the restoration process of Bougainville, and driving towards into these processes, we need to ensure that the economic activities of Bougainville must be restored. And tourism is one area that has got the greatest potential. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have got to restore back our connectivity with the people of Bougainville. It must not only be seen as government to government, but we must have people-to-people connections, interactions with the people of Bougainville. We need to see more Papua New Guineans going across to Bougainville and interact with the people across there. This is important because we have got to make sure that, whilst the process is ongoing, we all have got our part to play. So one of the things that I would like to basically stress here is that just as much as we are managing the processes as the outcome of the referendum, we must not forget also to give opportunities back to the people of Bougainville, and that we must restore the economic activities on Bougainville, which are agriculturally based. They've got one of the biggest maritime resources in this part of the region. And this is in an area where I'm pretty sure that they will be able to harvest the marine resources they have got available. But the final outcome of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we must have our presence, giving them support so that they know that we have not deserted them. And on this note, I would like to commend the Prime Minister and the team on both sides that basically now driving the outcome of the referendum. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Esala.
And thank you for allowing me to be the first to express support and also some points in relation to this very important national debate on an issue that concerns our country, on an issue that also concerns the supremacy of our Constitution and our Parliament. I thank the Prime Minister for presenting a paper. It's informative and a paper that brings us up to date in relation to the progress that's been made. A paper that highlights commitments that have been made by the National Executive Council. And notably, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the agreement to extend time before Parliament can be asked or called upon to exercise its powers of ratification. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, I want to use the opportunity also to commend the leadership of this country, both sides of the aisle, past prime ministers and leaders who have been involved in the process so far. I also want to use the opportunity to place on record a sincere appreciation to the international community led by the United Nations, our regional partners, including New Zealand and Australia, who have been there from day one and continue to stand with us. As the other speakers have said, and as the Prime Minister has highlighted, this is an issue that is a present leadership challenge. It is a leadership challenge that faces us, this generation of leaders. We were not there when the CPC adopted the Constitution in 1975. The issue of a breakaway province was not within the anticipation of our founding fathers who put together our Constitution. We were not there when the question was asked about why the Constitution in 1975 ought to be amended to include the provincial government system. But we know from reading literature that the National Parliament and the national government at that time had to accommodate the issue which was pressed and spearheaded by the Bougainville leaders at the time. Mr. Deputy Speaker, many of us we were still not here in Parliament in 2001 when the peace accord was signed. And contrary to certain belief out there in the society, in our communities, our Constitution was amended to accommodate the peace agreement and the process that has led up to where it is now. But we are now entering a new milestone where Parliament is going to be again asked to listen to the voice, the outcome, the voice of our people in the autonomous region as expressed in the referendum held last year. Two issues that I want to highlight to support this debate. Firstly, that in the wisdom of leaders past and present, we have maintained the supreme place of Parliament in the debate and in the discussion so far. At the same time, when our leaders, both sides, the ABG and our own national parliament, decided to amend the Constitution, we were admitting that this process must now be guided within the framework of our Constitution. Mr. Deputy Speaker, those 2 points form the basis of my contribution to this debate this afternoon. Firstly, Bougainville is not a matter for politics. The issue of Bougainville's request for independence is not a light matter. It goes to the very core of our union as a nation of multiple tribes, diverse in our origins, different people groups coming together under one constitution. Bougainville is not, the issue of Bougainville is not something for politics. It is a higher issue. And I pay particular attention to the Prime Minister's reference to the further activities beyond the Warburg dialogue. And I want to say this, that both sides of the House must realize that our Constitution that forms the very foundation of our country and our legal systems should never be tampered with unless it is the common and clear, unequivocal will of our people. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we speak about the way forward from this side of the House, we want to support any effort that seeks the consensus of our people. I want to draw to the attention of the Honorable House the intention of the Constitutional Planning Committee when in 1975 they adopted the Constitution of Papua New Guinea. In part 3, or part 13, I beg your pardon, part 12, I beg your pardon, of the Constitution itself, there's reference to provisions for constitutional review. And the intention of our founding fathers was that within 3 months, or within 3 years, I beg your pardon, within 3 years of the commencement of our Independence Day, Parliament would have passed what was called a law to establish a general constitutional commission. And if honorable members of the House would take the trouble to read through section 260, 261, and down to 263, you will see that our founding fathers anticipated a time when a challenge like this would be before us. My contribution, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is this, that instead of just a team of ministers, instead of relying on CLRC, here the Constitution provides the mechanism. Here the Constitution is saying that the will of Parliament must be expressed in a bipartisan way. That there will be a law setting up a constitutional commission. It's late now, but never too late, particularly in view of this important challenge we face. A bill in which leaders from both sides of the House and certain prescribed authorities in subsection 3 of section 260. That's the authority that must be mandated by Parliament to support the National Executive Council in the way forward. That's the authority that must be specifically and clearly tasked, not just to look at the national government's side or the mainland of our country, but to also look at the issues that our people in Bougainville are now articulating and raising. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I say that the way we have progressed so far, up to the point when the Prime Minister is now reporting to us on the Warburg dialogue, it's showing a very important signal to us as leaders of the present moment or present hour. It's saying to us that our nation cannot continue to survive with a centralized government. Waigani's control and hold on power and resources must be broken. As we deal with the Bougainville issue, more and more you will see that the answer is in giving more powers. As our Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister keep saying, political independence, political decentralization under the organic law and provincial governments has not worked. We've got provinces, governors on both sides of the House today who are saying, no, we want more autonomy, we want more decentralization. We want to have the liberty to prioritize. In 1975, it was the Bougainville leadership that said, decentralize, create provincial government systems. Today they are saying, give us more autonomy or independence. And the answer in which our Prime Minister and the past leadership are now approaching it clearly shows us as leaders of this generation that Waigani cannot continue to pretend that it's taking care of all our districts and provinces adequately. Waigani is corrupt. Waigani is inefficient. Waigani is unfair, insensitive. The lessons we are learning as a leadership of this hour, as we see the Bougainville process or Bougainville Accord and peace process going forward, reminds us that our nation was meant to be a decentralized nation. I recall, Mr. Deputy Speaker, In the debate in the House of Assembly, the handsets will show visionary leaders like the late Sir John Guy saying, you cannot centralize this nation and expect it to survive. You cannot. There was a strong debate about federal or regional decentralized governments. There was even a suggestion that the Prime Minister would be elected directly from the people, by the people. So he doesn't manage the politics that we are all always concerned about, but he runs his agenda. If he wants to take back Papua New Guinea, let it be so. But the current systems won't allow him to. And so we see a lesson here from the Bougainville process. The challenge is us, and Deputy Speaker, my second last point is that much good work has already gone into the organic law on decentralization. It's already in the notice paper before us. Honorable leaders should take time to read this. I was on that side of the House under two different prime ministers. And this was a task that we took to heart with the CLRC and our officials, because we knew that a debate on Bougainville is going to expose some hidden dynamics that are pre-existing. Leaders on both sides will acknowledge that before the decentralization, the bill on decentralization was formalized, already we were signing MOUs with provinces for greater autonomy. Before we came this far, the DDA concept came before this House, once again to deal with Waigani's grasp over money so that we can bypass bureaucracy and money can go to the districts where DDAs can use that to effect the change and attend to the issues that are prevalent in our society, in our communities. But we also know that the governors took a very drastic stand. As we speak, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there's a Supreme Court reference that will one day deal with the legality of DDAs and maybe the SIPs. My point is that we have been trying this and that, fragmented here and there, but now, before us, as we do bipartisan support and approach to the issue of Bougainville, we should be rewriting or writing the template that will guide our future and the shape and form that our nation should take going into the future. In fact, we all acknowledge that significant radical transformation or reform must take place everywhere, from our civil service, from our state-owned enterprises, from how we're dealing with our resources. There's an organic law now before the Parliament to commercialize the assets of the state. These are radical reforms. These are departures from the status quo. And so, Deputy Speaker, as I conclude, I want to say this, that whilst Bougainville is a current challenge for us, for the leadership of today, it also provides the opportunity the country needs. This is a debate that takes us beyond the next election. This is a debate that takes us beyond the next 5 years. It matters not who sits over there as Prime Minister or who sits in the NEC. This is about the nation. This is about the next 50 years. Hard questions must be answered. I know that our Prime Minister has issued a warning against secessionist sentiments because our leaders are unrestrained. Some have said openly in the public space, what's good for Bougainville is good for us too. And the way we are going, the way you're controlling DSIP and politicizing DSIP monies, and the way we are mistreating our systems of government, the way we continue to corrupt ourselves, It's not going to help. Mr. Deputy Speaker, from this side, I can assure you my support. If our officials, together with the prescriptions that the Prime Minister has highlighted, our officials can look seriously at forming this National Commission to review the Constitution, every aspect of it, including Section 209, where finances are concerned. One budget, consolidated revenue to the bill that comes to Parliament, we pass that. And not on the side making cow activities and commitments here and there, not allowing for agencies that are not accountable to the Parliament to take hold of the public monies, because that is creating distrust. Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and once again I thank the Prime Minister and express my support for this very important bill going forward. Thank you.
The Honourable Governor for Southern Highlands.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Me too, contribute long this debate. Before me contribute, me commend him, Prime Minister and current government, for taking a very bold decision and approach in dealing with one of PNG's very challenging matter of national issue. So far, I think the level of confidence from the autonomous region and, of course, from the wider PNG, insofar as the government's approach to this very important issue, in my view, is very comforting and gives us greater hope that some positive progress on a win-win situation will progress. Having said that, we also commend him debate belong Sado Minister belong Attorney General. I think this approach of bipartisan approach, in my view, is something we should expound on this as Parliament, on the process before Parliament can go through the process of ratification. This issue belong Bougainville. Me yet to me not been clear, but former government putting me as chairman long bipartisan parliamentary committee on the referendum. A lot of issues became clear, and I think Bougainville is a matter of national importance where me like him, you, me, or leaders of Parliament must speak out, debate this, and talk out and talk straight, because this is one of the most important issues in my belief that will affect the future going forward, because what we do in here and how we go forward will determine issues about greater autonomy, and of course the future of governance into 50 years from 2025 and onwards. Firstly, me like Toksavalo Yumi all Parliament. I thought Bougainville was it was like a province. Bougainville, in my view, is not a province. Bougainville is an autonomous region, a provincial government system. You must clearly display. Plan is something me look in. Long this run long parliamentary committee. A lot of elements on the organic law still applies in Bougainville. DDS system, PSIP, DSIP, capacity issues. Those are features of the organic law on provincial and local level government still apply in a region that is autonomous by the Constitution. So this law mismatch on functions, and going forward, you may need law look this law. The Constitution, just as much as it has created the independent state of Papua New Guinea, it created the autonomous government with full powers, except this 5 that Miblai Tok Longena. And that 5 relates to defense, border control, foreign relations, regulations on telecommunication and others that we had from the Prime Minister's statement. Those are the only 5 functions and powers that the national government or independent state of PNG retain. All other functions, as per the ABG, is constitutionally given through the autonomous government. So, time you meet total Bougainville, I think you must clear the display. That's the first one. Number two, this Bougainville peace agreement has three important pillars. One prolonged display and transfer of functions. And we heard from the lands minister. Lands functions was recently transferred. I'm not sure whether all the functions of government have been transferred to the autonomous region, although it is part of one of the pillars in the peace agreement, whether all the functions for national government, you blood transferring monoga and mino clear, including the capacity to raise revenue, including the capacity on procurement, including the capacity on implementation. It's in the peace agreement. Second pillar of the peace agreement talks about weapons disposal. I really don't know where all the weapons have been disposed to this stage, although the peace agreement has been fulfilled. The third pillar talks about the referendum, which we have already delivered. Outcome result of the referendum process has now fulfilled the Bougainville peace agreement. What is pending is the outcome of the Bougainville peace, outcome of the referendum process, where 97% of the people have voted for independence. The other option that the referendum question asked was greater autonomy. And I bring to Parliament, what is greater autonomy? Greater autonomy and by meaning one and something. We need to qualify this thing. They have already autonomy that was provided for under the Constitution. So what does greater autonomy imply? What does greater autonomy mean? And we need to qualify this, because it was also in the referendum option. So greater autonomy and you mean total one. Giving back 5 law powers, you mean holim longen, or what does greater autonomy qualify? As a country, I think we need to debate and expand on this. The other issue is the 97% in the referendum opted for independence. And so we have now debated widely in here in Parliament and said that independence is not provided for in the Constitution. So these are matters of national importance that will affect our country going forward. Now, me encourage him, you may all leaders, take a serious interest on this. Now, you may not let them, it becomes the executive government's business. In the numerous requests for autonomy, greater autonomy, we need to qualify these things. Because if we don't do that, we may go into a very dangerous path where we come to blockades like this. Constitution doesn't provide for independence. Now you talk about greater autonomy, which is not very clear. What do you really mean by greater autonomy? We need to quantify this. They are already fully autonomized to run their own affairs under the Constitution, just like the independent state of PNG. So, me bring him Loyumi. During the other debate, I think Minister, Honorable Senior Member, Dr. Pukatemo said something about JSP and the National Executive Council meeting and setting the agenda on these things at the JSP. And he brought the issue that it shouldn't be the JSP, it should be some other forums. But I think JSP consists of the leadership from the autonomous region, the president, and his relevant ministers, the prime minister and key ministers, to discuss issues about transition and going forward that affects the autonomous region as well as PNG. In my view, that's the right forum to discuss and flag these discussions going forward. But I also want to propose that the Parliament must take note of the ratification process that the executive government is providing to us to debate. So this ratification process, when I prepared my statement yesterday, I didn't know the Prime Minister was going to come with a prepared statement, but I thought one option was to go and discuss and consult with the people of Papua New Guinea, the 22 provinces, see what they feel about this. Another option is that we members of Parliament take it on our own responsibility, because we are representing the people, and we can discuss and articulate the way on how to go about the ratification process going forward. My view is that we should take a bipartisan approach and allow both sides of the Parliament to debate this ratification process, and do not let the executive government deal with this itself. We will have to live with the implications of our decision now going into the future. And before I conclude, let me say that from 1975 to 1995, 20 years, the country was setting its pace and approach on governance and setting the priorities and going forward. And from 1995 to 2005, we've had our challenges of, leadership transition taking place. Now from 2010 to going into the future, 2025, we will have 50 years as a country, taking stock of where we have come out from governance, law and order issues, education, health, all the service delivery, including this much talked about autonomy thing, but we must need to qualify autonomy insofar as these constitutional applications and its implications are concerned. So autonomy, you mean you can preach him nothing because autonomy and talk stuff. You need to qualify what are you really looking at, because there will come a time where you will come in conflict with the constitutional provisions of our forefathers, and now we as a country going forward. And Bougainville's referendum result is a clear case in point. And I think the referendum process that we are now seeing, I am proposing to Parliament that we take a bipartisan approach, and whether we go by province to province and region to region, consulting our people and bring their opinions and their views to Parliament, or we as parliamentarians take the position and represent our people, we must take the process to articulate this. The Prime Minister's statement here, in so far as the WABEC joint statement, where both Bougainville and the PNG government leaders made agreeing to consult on the definition and the process of ratification, and to identify the constitutional issues relating to the referendum result and tabling of the consultation outcomes in the National Parliament, is a very good window of opportunity for us to take on board. And I think the younger generation of leaders who came in the last Parliament and this Parliament, this is your time and moment to set the future as to what kind of future we would want to go ahead in this country. In my view, decentralization system is the pillar of unity in a country of diverse languages, culture, society, whatsoever. So I think decentralization system in this country is an important institution, and governments, and of course the leaders of this country must see to protect it. So in conclusion, I said that the bipartisan approach to seeing and supporting the executive governments on dealing with this Bougainville referendum outcome is the way to go, and I am encouraging leaders to speak your mind on this thing and don't sit back. This is a matter of national importance. Thank you very much.
The member for Kandap.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for the opportunity to speak on an issue that is unprecedentedly very strategic, very important, will have impacts to this whole nation, not just today, but for many other years to come, in terms of maintaining, keeping the sovereignty of Papua New Guinea intact. It's very important in every aspect of it. And I'm honored to speak to this, to contribute a bit to the statement of update given by the Honorable Prime Minister on the Bougainville peace process. Now, before I speak, it would be remiss of me to acknowledge these two very important, great leaders of Papua New Guinea. I cannot say one leader of Bougainville, the other leader say that, but both leaders of Papua New Guinea, one being the Prime Minister, Honorable James Marape, the other being the President of the Autonomous Region, Ismail Torama, in coming up with emanating from previous discussions and agreements and events met by various governments and very important select players, coming up with the sub-agreement. May I also humbly say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that I am thankful that the government and the President of the Bougainville and the Prime Minister giving the people of Anga the honor, the profound importance in participating in hosting this meeting, because we will go down in the history, because like I said, this issue that we're discussing is unprecedented. It's an issue, like the governor for Southern Islands was saying, like I had the former Deputy Prime Minister on the opposition side was saying, like I had the original member for Bougainville was saying, and others, like Minister Environment was speaking, we have to address that holistically, not only as a government, not only as politicians, but must be seen in every perspective of it, because it is so important to the future of this country. Very important. I acknowledge it is a Bougainville peace agreement that we are discussing here. I see that it is a Bougainville peace agreement we're discussing, and the Prime Minister's statement is an update on the Bougainville peace process that emanates from the peace agreement. So the focus of discussion in this country is not on self-determination, not on independence, but on establishing peace in Bougainville. Now we call the Autonomous Region of Bougainville. That is a focus. Therefore, previous governments and public servants and leaders of this country, they, I think, very sufficiently and very wisely coined this agreement, calling it a peace agreement. And then, therefore, we have to go through a process, and some of those process, I think, very clearly outlined by the governor of Southern Islands. Being part of the process, he says, we have to come up with strategic things like the referendum. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I also note that the referendum is non-binding. That also must be looked into perspective. It is not a binding referendum. Although the 97% of the people of Bougainville may have determined or decided in the referendum for a self-determination, but it is non-binding. Therefore, the agreement that both parties arrived at in Wabec talks about this sub-agreement, where they've established a secretariat that will continue to define what ratification is to the referendum results. And therefore, the Prime Minister is now saying, and the President, they have both agreed that let's define the Constitution as to the ratification of the results of the referendum. So that's where this update is bringing us to. So we should not be signifying the word self-determination or the independence, because that is only a strategy that will bring us peace. What we must look at is the peace that must exist in Bougainville. Now, Bougainville can be used as an example to also establish process of peace that we find that is needed in other parts of the country. And I'd like to contribute in stating three areas that I see are very important to this. The first one is whether it is a self-determination, whatever it might be in the process that's been started, or whether it's a more additional autonomy, like has been discussed. The three fundamental areas, I think, at least, that we must get it correct. We cannot call a country independent just because the name independent. We cannot call a province or a region autonomous because of the name. There's certain criterion, there's certain conditions, there are things that must be met by this parliament. The parliament is responsible through the executive government. The opposition is responsible through this parliament in addressing issues like we've been doing to making sure that we do create a conducive environment for whatever form and shape of environment we like to create. In this case of Bougainville, if it is going to be self-determination, the responsibility is in this house to creating that conducive environment if it will be the wish of the people of Papua New Guinea, not just the Bougainvilleans. Or if it is going to be more added additional autonomous power, that condition, that environment must be conducive, and that also lies with this house. So therefore, this house is very responsible for this. We are the ones that makes determination on these issues. One thing, I would like to agree with the member Basala. And what he said is very true. This is not a political issue, although it is a political matter. It must be seen on a bipartisan approach. And he discussed about capacity, capability. Before you become autonomous or even independent or as a sovereign nation, you have to have the capability to justify that you are actually what you want to be or what you are. You have to have the capacity. Now let's admit to the fact that we as a leadership on this floor of parliament, and also we've been in various governments, all of us here, we've been in one government or another, we have overlooked, we've spoken it quiet, we've spoken adequately, we've been so proficient and we talk about those issues, but what has been lacking in this country is the action that must go with it. We have never built capacity on the ground, not just in Bougainville, but all throughout Papua New Guinea, and what the former Attorney General is saying is very true. Our provincial government systems, our LLG systems, and now the autonomous region of Bougainville, the capacity is not there. The people of Bougainville will know this and they'll agree with me. Even if there's a strong sentiment that they could have expressed in form of 97% that they would like to go or seek self-determination or independent nation on their own, they will agree with me that the capability of them surviving as a nation is just not there. We also agree. Really, let's be honest. If we judge ourselves in a just way, all Papua New Guineans like in this parliament, let me say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that some of our parts in this country have failed to govern. Some departments have failed. Like, for example, the police has failed. If somebody calls us a failed nation, we cannot really argue very strongly on it. You look at it. They're not just working. Before you talk about anything else, Mr. Speaker, we must fix capacity and capability issues. For example, your public service. We sit on the floor of Parliament, we continue to debate and criticize the public service, and somebody is not performing his job or her job properly, so we bring our brother in, our sister in, and our political supporter in, our political cronies in, and on we go. One government after another, one parliament after another, one session after another over the last 45 years. That's it. Papua New Guinean style. You put them all kind. We have compromised the public service, and we compromised the board, we compromised the SOEs, we compromised the study organizations. Then we say, oh, the public service is not performing. See, we have to start to now learn that systems of governance, they're very important. They work properly without political influence in it. Like I get one point, and I can see it very clearly when I see the governor for Madang, and the member for Madang, and I as a member for Kandef, and the governor for Enga, and you go on. We have all these political differences. The difference that exists between the various leaders and levels of governments just destroys the public service altogether. Now for Bougainville to go into whatever we would like to see it come out of through the ratification process, we must make sure that our capacity and capability is one that we must understand, and let's establish it, not just in Bougainville, but in PNG also. Because there's no point in PNG trying to add one of its own, a province or an autonomous region, to establish those capability issues, etc., in the state institutions and organizations, the judiciary and the police and so forth, when the parent country itself or the government, its parliament itself doesn't address itself. There's no point.
The second issue that I'd like to address is the issue that the Prime Minister mentioned, that they have established a joint secretariat and there should be a public awareness made on this. Now, I agree. I think we should all allow Papua New Guineans to determine or make a decision on this, and consultation should be there. Probably, or maybe, there should be another referendum conducted throughout the country to verify or to address the issue of the 97% of Bougainvilleans wanting independence. So it's not just a Bougainville issue alone. It's a PNG issue. It's based on this country's solidarity. As we are now, we're already in very diversified ethnicities and cultural groups, and et cetera, et cetera. So to make a decision very easy and allow the process of disintegration or independence or self-determination taking place in one part of the country can open the floodgate to other parts of the country when you see mismanagement, corruption, political infighting, and failed institutions and states in this province, in this country continues, you'll find that others will want to move down the same road again. For example, what if New Guinea Highlands comes up and says, New Guinea Highlands, well, Bougainville has gone, I want to be part of a regional autonomous region, and then look down the road that the Bougainville has gone. Those issues need to be addressed very carefully at a national perspective. So that means every Papua New Guinean in this country needs to make a decision on this. We could run another national referendum on the Bougainville issue. The secretariat that is looking at the issue of ratification could go down that road. And when we talk about the bipartisan approach, could be that we should put probably the same authorities that are doing that now could do it, or we can charge that responsibility to another body we create and look at the national referendum that determines or makes its decision as to the independence decision by the people of Bougainville. Finally, Mr. Speaker, let me address this. Political, economical, fiscal, and law or legal structures in this country that needs a lot of reform. We have to fix this house. For instance, I was a leader of opposition on the other side, the honorable member for Vanimo Green, Belnama City. It's a good place. It's not a bad place. And some of our colleagues were on this side. And I experienced this. That this house democracy we need to restructure to make this house become more effective and efficient in its decision making. For example, on the budget, any government that comes into office, there is a number, just bulldoze the budget, the opposition is useless. Whatever the opposition says is never carried. There's no upper layer of government to look at this, or the legislation, or the laws. We should have a upper house and a lower house. Bicameral system. Let's restructure the law. Restructure this house so you get more check and balance system. A bicameral system would be a better system to look at this kind of laws. You ratify in the lower house, or you make a law at the lower house, then you have the upper house to look at the laws that have been made, like for in this case, the ratification as per the Constitution that the Prime Minister stated here. We should be doing something like that. It could be something very typical to Papua New Guinea. You look at your committee system in the parliament. The committee system doesn't work. But the committee system should be the most powerful. Every minister to report to the committee. The committee on infrastructure, the committee on health, the committee on finance and accounting, the committee on work should be the most powerful committee in the parliament so that every minister reports to the committee so there's a check and balance. We have to restructure our political structure in our system. The way we're going, it is, well, we have learned enough that we have not isolated most of the problems that we have seen perpetuating in this country. We need to have a structure that is completely different. Now look at all your public servants too. We have many, many public service bodies just performing the same function. For example, the Public Service Commission, the Department of Personnel Management. You look at your petroleum sector, you've got the National Gas Corporation, then you've got the Petromin, then you've got Kumul Petroleum, and so forth. So you've so many bodies that are just doing the same job. And you look at the operational cost to it, your recurrent expenditure, it is so high. So therefore, you cannot satisfy the development programs of government. So to really addressing such issues, we have to put in check and balance the systems in place. We need to encourage good governance, accountability. We have to stand up for what is right, continue to strengthen the systems of governance we have, cut down the excessive expenditure on those areas that are not necessary. Government policies are very important. We must be consistent throughout the next 20, 30 years, and then you will find addressing issues like the Bougainville Peace Agreement. This process will be much easier for this House to address them. That we announced so many things in this array, even compounded by the culture that we live in, that our people even want us to go and give them money for bride prizes and money for this and that. You find a member is packed up with all these things. I even think, Mr. Speaker, that we should have positions created in the electorates in Papua New Guinea for those members who will only be responsible for looking at national issues. So those guys, or those men, women on this floor parliament who become ministers under any government, their electorate is only to address national issues, and they're the ones who are the ministers. You know, now a minister, a member for Kandeh becomes a minister, he's a member for Kandeh, he's chairman of the KDDA, he's also this and that. Man, it's overloaded so much work, you'll never get done. That's why the other country leaders, they do better than us. We do not seem to understand issues. We don't seem to understand how we should function. We don't even know our jobs well. All the members of parliament think that their job is to go and give checks to the villagers and go and cut ribbons. And that's not our job. We are legislators. We have to restructure ourselves to change first. That's why ministers come from electorates. We call them minister electorates. So they address national issues. They're very important. See, those issues are very important, and within our structures, if we change them and align to providing services and quality service to our people on the ground, you'll not see another Bougainville. Because the government and this parliament is properly positioned, properly structured, therefore the culture on the ground would be good. Then you find translation of policies and service down to the ground level will be effective and efficient, therefore people will be happy. Bougainvillians, they went to war because they were not happy because somebody was cheating them. Somebody was deceiving them. Somebody was not listening to them. Because these issues at the top level, structural issues, cultural issues, we need to address them. So those three areas probably, they play a major role, not just in Bougainville, but also in the rest of the country. To finish up, let me say, Bougainville is Papua New Guinea. It's part of Papua New Guinea. We must not talk of independence yet. The agreement there is a peace agreement, it's a peace process. It is not a self-determination agreement, neither is it a self-determination process. It is a peace agreement. Let's look at how do we empower, build capability, how do we address the ratification issue within the context of law, and how do we structure ourselves as Papua New Guineans to change the culture so we administer and govern properly, and you will cut down and diffuse any other people who might be dissatisfied in future. I mean, in terms of our provinces and districts and our regions. Thank you very much, David Speaker.
Member for Abao.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I also wish to commend the Prime Minister for presenting this updated statement on this very, very important issue, the political future of Bougainville in Papua New Guinea. Also, I want to take this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister for appointing me as Minister for Bougainville Affairs when he became the Prime Minister, when I led the referendum process. And it dawned on me the lack of information both out there in Bougainville and also here, more so in the mainland, on the Bougainville issue. And therefore, in my interventions today, I'd like to make some very, very strong recommendations for the government to take heed of. Just a little bit of a background. The thought of an independent state for Bougainville is not new. In fact, when we declared independence on the 16th of September 1975, the then leadership of Bougainville did say, bye-bye, see you, we are going for independence anyway. We're going to be by ourselves. And if you read the history, there has been 2 unilateral declarations of independence, which were not recognized by the UN and us. Then the crisis came upon us. And therefore, in an effort to bring peace to the island and the country, we went for the Bougainville Peace Agreement, which was signed on the 31st of August, 2001 by the then Prime Minister, the late Chair Maker-Morauta. Since then, we have to acknowledge as the national governments, past and present, that we really never honored the Bougainville Peace Agreement to its letter. And my observation was because it was a new experience for the independent state of Papua New Guinea, this concept of an autonomous region, and therefore Parliament struggled to amend the national constitution to allow for this autonomous arrangement. And the political leadership as well as the bureaucratic leadership also was not sure how to handle an autonomous region. And therefore the delays in different leaderships, whether prime ministers or ministers of state, in this question of, for example, how and when do you transfer certain powers that they were still holding in Waigani. So that delayed a lot of that. And also the Restoration Development Grant. The debate on the Restoration Development Grant was only cleared just before the referendum. And so 19 years, the confusion of how much should we be giving to Bougainville, the RDG, so that they can have a restoration program preparing for the 3 pillars that were agreed upon: good governance, weapons disposal, and the referendum which we concluded. And therefore, my first point right now and my strong recommendation right now, which support the Prime Minister's call, is to undertake a major awareness program, not only throughout the country, but for the leadership here in the Parliament, because you and I are the ones, if you and I come back in the next election, it is this honorable House, which was recognized by the peace agreement, that the final authority belongs to the National Parliament. And so the awareness education must be here, and therefore I support the call by the Honorable Governor for Southern Highlands. And I note in the bipartisan committee today that since the then chairman became a Minister of State, the bipartisan committee on Bougainville, there's only 3 members, no chairman, and 2 other members are not yet elected by this honorable House to give credence to this important issue. And so I strongly recommend Prime Minister, the Leader of Government Business, before we rise, can we appoint the chairman, bipartisan committee, and appoint the other members of the bipartisan committee on Bougainville affairs? I think that's the first issue this Parliament really should sort out, and it can be done very, very quickly during this sitting of Parliament. There's one other matter which, Prime Minister, I'm sure in your future statement you will mention, but you recall that we did bring the last president, the Honorable Dr. John Momis, to address us in the Honorable House. And please recall that there was a memorandum of agreement between our national parliament and the Bougainville House of Representatives. So there is, between the two institutions, a memorandum of agreement that needs to be brought in this entire process of how do we respond on the post-referendum matters. Eventually, the parliament will then address it. So I strongly recommend that the agreement between the two institutions must also be brought into the loop so that there is that interaction at that level. The third recommendation, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is what our Shadow Attorney General has just sat down with. Because Parliament will have to address this as a national issue, and it requires and has been acknowledged in the WABEC meeting that we will have to re-look at the entire constitution. In fact, Prime Minister, you have made a statement that you would want to re-look at some of the laws that have been outdated in preparation for 2025, which is going to be in the 11th Parliament. And so I strongly recommend that we pass that legislation that the Shadow Attorney General has talked about, that in preparation, because it will have to address the issue of the Bougainville issue, post-referendum issue. It will also have to address the other calls for autonomous arrangements with other provinces. It will also have to address the new organic law, the bill that is before the House right now. For example, it also recommends that provinces can integrate. Provinces can merge. So those are big calls on this House. And therefore, we need to structure a process, an institutional process, and therefore the call for the Honourable House to pass a constitutional review commission by law, rather than Constitutional Law Reform Commission, which has too many other things. You have to give its directive to do. But this is a major undertaken by this Honourable House in preparation for the changes that we need to bring on the floor of Parliament to get ready for the 50th anniversary and going forward into the next 50 years as an independent state. There was mention in the early years when the then chairman of the Constitutional Planning Committee, Honourable John Momis, a serious thought about regional governments rather than a centralized government. And in fact, Sir John Guise lost his race to become the first Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea because of that argument. And then when John Momis came in, then we granted the provincial government system. And as I've been saying on the Honourable Floor of Parliament, we gained independence in 1975. Organic law and provincial government came in 2 years later, 1977. And we reviewed it in 1995 and brought in the local level government. So we have 3 levels of legislature. And so in this process, difficulties in service delivery have come about. We established 3 levels of legislature and 4 levels of bureaucracy. And I've been saying on the floor of Parliament, we really brought onto ourselves major structural impediments. These are the structural impediments that this Honourable House really have to seriously look at. And what an opportune time for us to seriously look at all the structural impediments in view of the issue of Bougainville political future. I think it's right timing. And Prime Minister, you are on the right trend. When I was listening to you, you are actually on the right trend. But you really need to incorporate the bigger picture, as you've been saying, on how are we going to cut all these bad pieces of legislation to clean up the constitution, clean up the organic laws, clean up the enabling legislation so that issues like autonomy can be institutionalized. And I commend the Vice Minister for Bougainville Affairs, Regional Member for Bougainville Affairs, in his now initiative to re-look at and restructure NCOBA. My view is, and because of my experience when I was Bougainville Affairs Minister, is that I think we have parked NCOBA by itself too much. Therefore, we've lost the institutionalization of this autonomous conversation. So my strong recommendation is bring it into the Minister for Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs, intergovernment relations, because that's where this institutional processing should take place. And so my recommendation is that the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Provincial and Local Level Government Affairs should focus on autonomous arrangements, which includes Bougainville and other autonomous conversations that will come into the future. And therefore we have now an institutional capacity to address politically aligned autonomous arguments. I want to inform the nation that our granting of autonomous status to Bougainville actually is in the world one of the greater autonomous arrangements in any part of the world. That means that Papua New Guinea actually has a very good experience on managing autonomous regions. And also on record, I want to say that the Bougainville Peace Agreement has been recognized as one of the most effective peace agreements anywhere on the face of this planet. So high commendations to every level of leadership in Bougainville, on the mainland, former prime ministers, current prime minister, former ministers, and both sides, Bougainville and the mainland. And so we have actually a very good experience, but we are not properly, what I call, properly institutionalizing that process. So it becomes a national knowledge. It becomes a institution where we can actually use that experience and database to quickly address these issues, for example, on autonomy, and on notice with the changes, proposed changes on the organic law on provincial governments and local level governments, I can see that there are areas that we really need to improve, and laws can be passed and we can always amend it. And to help us amend, we need to have institutional capability. So in the reform of the National Coordination Office for Bougainville, I'm recommending on this Honorable House that we need to bring in the Department and the Ministry of Intergovernment Relations in the process, because that is very important. My concern, Mr. Deputy Speaker, while I was Minister for Bougainville Affairs, was Secretary for Intergovernment Relations, Minister for Intergovernment Relations were not part of the entire process. And so the agency managing intergovernment relations was not part of it. We need to now bring it in order to build that institutional capability. It's very, very, very important. I am very happy that the Economic Summit is going to be held in November this year. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, President Torama. Thank you, Vice Minister. And my strong recommendation, and before I left the office, I actually sat down with the European Union representative. I said, we need a special package for Bougainville following the Economic Summit. So I would strongly recommend a good loan, whether it's from the Asian Development Bank or European Union or other bilateral or multilateral partners, that after the summit, for the 2022 budget, we need to have a PIP, fully funded, so that the outcomes of the economic summit can then be delivered on a timely basis, because economic growth is what you and I want, not only in Bougainville, but also in the rest of the country. My final point, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is the process that we are currently engaging in the post-referendum process. And I want to highlight a couple of issues that emanated when we were concluding the referendum process. One of them was a question by the Bougainville leaders on will the next ABG be structured under the same arrangement of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, or should the ABG be a transitional government? So we were arguing. We finally agreed, unless we change the laws, it will be the same. And then the Prime Minister's stance is right in that instance. But the questions came up. The current ABG, led by President Obama, that structure, is it okay, or should we have a different arrangement? And therefore, relook at the Bougainville Peace Agreement, which, in our view, in some other views, concluded after the referendum. In my view, the Bougainville Peace Agreement is a continuous process. And a member for Kandeb is absolutely right, that we must not forget the ultimate goal of the Bougainville Peace Agreement. And that is to maintain peace in Bougainville through peaceful processes only. No other process. This is why the weapons disposal came in as a pillar. This is why we allowed governance, and when the two previous elections of ABG came in, they went through peaceful election processes. So we were able to allow the referendum to come on board, despite the issues on whether we actually removed all the weapons or disposed all the weapons. And so those questions are still emanating, and perhaps there may need to be a real look at Bougainville Peace Agreement while we are in the post-referendum phase. This is a post-referendum phase and post-Bougainville Peace Agreement phase. And so the leadership will have to now relook at it. In the point that I raised when the Prime Minister in the last session of Parliament discussed the issue on Bougainville, I did say that the consultation process must not be confused with the joint supervisory body process. The JSB process is to oversee routine government administrative processes. It's a supervisory process rather than a consultative process. Because the consultative process, the way myself and the then minister responsible, Honorable Albert Punhao, the way we were structuring it was that they will have a cross-selection of leadership in their consultation team, women, youth, chiefs, not members of the House of Representatives.
Honourable Member for Abao, your time for debate is up.
I will leave it to that, and hopefully another time will come for further debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, I know that much of you seeing the issue are very important and like to debate. I'd like to inform the House that I will give preference to our Bougainville members to have a say on the debate. I'm not depriving your rights to speak. I will allow for you to speak when time allows, but I'll give preference to the Bougainville members, so I'll ask the Communication Minister to make his statement.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I also want to be part of this conversation in as far as the statement on Bougainville by the Prime Minister this morning. I'm really thankful that the Prime Minister, as Minister for Bougainville Affairs, can put a statement on the affairs of Bougainville so far. And I think this is the first time I have actually heard a Prime Minister talking about Bougainville and bringing a statement to Parliament. But before I say a few things in my support to this statement, I want to also stand here and pay tribute to all the past Prime Ministers and the past governments for all your support in bringing Bougainville to where we are today. You have all done your best and your part. For that, I thank you all from the bottom of my heart on behalf of my people of South Bougainville and Bougainville for that matter. I also want to thank our peace-building partners in the countries like Australia, New Zealand, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu, and others. And of course, donor agencies for supporting Bougainville in those years that we were struggling to be where we are today. Fast forward to the present, I want to thank you, Prime Minister, and this government for making Bougainville your #1 priority. Prime Minister, you have always stated that Bougainville is your priority, and you have always stated that Bougainville will continue to get your attention. And for that, I salute you, and I want to urge you to continue to do that for the good of Bougainville and, of course, this country as a whole. The statement, again, demonstrates your commitment on Bougainville. In fact, the people of Bougainville are being updated through the statement on where this government is in terms of addressing the issues of Bougainville. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the issues of Bougainville and other related issues on Bougainville are not impossible to address. And this government is doing that, and I know that as a parliament we can address some of those issues on Bougainville, and I heard a lot from my colleague members on what you feel and think we should do in terms of bringing Bougainville to a lasting peace in this time we as leaders are sitting here. We are looking for a long-lasting peace in Bougainville, and therefore it is our obligation to make sure that we find that lasting peace on Bougainville. And I'm very thankful because this government has, since coming into office, has taken Bougainville as its priority. And for that has been working very closely through the JSBs and through the consultation processes in making sure leadership on either side, they know what is going on, especially on the issue of the 97.7% vote on referendum. That is very important because that is the wish of the people of Bougainville. And that wish must be respected at all times because we went through a process that was both recognized locally, nationally, and internationally as well. And so the statement today amplifies and signifies that this country is focused on Bougainville. This government, I beg your pardon, is focused on Bougainville. Focused meaning that the issues that are being raised and also the issues that are still pending will be addressed and will continue to be addressed through these interactions with the Bougainville leadership. And I want to thank the Prime Minister and, of course, the President of the Autonomous Government of Bougainville, Honorable Ismail Torama, and both their teams for making sure that that conversation continues. It's very important the conversation continues. This government must continue to do that. And any other government, for that matter, that comes after 2022
must continue to keep Bougainville as part of its priority, because if we solve Bougainville, if we bring Bougainville to an amicable solution to what we're looking for, then we would be bringing the country to understand and recognize that we can do it. We can do it as Papua New Guineans helping other Papua New Guineans. I acknowledge the leaders of parliament who have spoken ahead of me, and I thank you all for your concerns and how you would like to see Bougainville progress through this period. Just a few points, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The issue of Ankoba is a sticking issue in Bougainville. Ankoba means National Coordinating of Bougainville Affairs. It's the National Coordinating Office, Bougainville Affairs. It's a coordinating office. And Ankoba needs to be repurposed. And I'm happy to hear that the Prime Minister and the Vice Minister have made that statement, that Ankoba must reorganize itself. We must reorganize Ankoba, because there's a lot of people sitting in Ankoba. Some of them don't have jobs. They just come in and they sit the whole day doing nothing, and then they go off at 4 or 6, and they get paid for nothing. This office must be a mean and lean office. That means only a few people who coordinate between the national government and Bougainville. How comes it's, right now its staff strength has gone right up. So I think we should do that as a matter of priority to get Ankoba to be what it's supposed to be coordinating the purpose of both governments. The national awareness that is in this report is a must. The national awareness means that Papua New Guinea is one country. And one country, one people, and we shall sing him this all the time. So when I'm something and we come up with Bougainville, Papua New Guinea too, he must involve, because this is heavy and we been come up. And we don't come up with Bougainville, that's all. And we come up with all get to have Papua New Guinea. That's all true also. We plan Bougainville, we go through long this situation. Now we plan come up with referendum, to decide the future. Papua New Guinea too, now future Bougainville talk with me like come up independent. So me believe also awareness, long go na talk long people long this country is important. All people belong this country too, only got right lo sabe when and something will come up lo Bougainville. Only got right too long sabe how this government will handle in Bougainville. So as a bipartisan approach, plenty of leadership la talk, I see this as something that will help us to get the people of this country to understand in the event that Bougainville, you may talk, okay, you come up independent. Or he can understand, or he can accept him, or he can. Otherwise, you got plenty model stuff. Plenty model, you may can bring him come inside. Now look long how you may can let him Bougainville stop, part of you may, but you may go through long some kind way where you may can look Savelo Bougainville as part of this country as well. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, me looking on some, Bougainville is an achievable situation. People can achieve him. But leadership must put him head one time. Me like him all, brother, you may long opposition too, since the government, you may all get to go one time long JSB too. You may all get to go one time long or consultation too. All get to boom one time. Me like government, me like not solve him this plus something. Opposition leader, you smile stop. You must come inside now, you may all get to boom one time. Holy man want them to make sure that this issue long Bougainville, you may all get some must address him. Plenty senior members of parliament stop. You've got plenty experience, plenty years of experience long looking one way you must bring in Bougainville go long end. So Mr. Deputy Speaker, me no got plenty talk because me serve an honorable colleague, member long Central Bougainville, let me got some talk to make him so. Display, I'm tinting blomi, na talk blomi, me have a must through long this statement. This statement, me long overdue. Now this kind of statement by keeping Bougainville people only focus on government long, you mean inside long PNG, long how you work long look long this our situation long Bougainville. Through plenty heavy stuff. No at man na finish mon is heavy. And one kind heavy me black long Bougainville, one kind heavy you got too long press blow you. Emi no osem emi narbla kind heavy, emi special heavy. No that. And one kind that's all. So me believe also, me believe also, me must put one time long work that make sure that me addressing this issue. Now me talk thank you long past governments, now government, long continue long helping me members of Bougainville, long funding, long district long make sure that me building more infrastructure, long beginning long all people When them helping me give me put him, and you can notice it in our electorates. All big money you give him long ABG, me no look him. Me no sabi look lo Mickey Manem. Government, Prime Minister, the government, we must look good on how you bring him money go inside long ABG too. When them way you mean not find him, you me give me go, and me put down inside long one big plus all water, now me finish. Now something where you mean not walk him, not looking by come up long help him more people long you know had something stop. So I'm planting all this something to me stop or some more heavy long Bougainville and me stop too long one map on another electorates now provinces inside our country blow me. But Prime Minister, thank you. Thank you long this statement to you. Very good statement, very clear, very simple. Now me stop or some more people blow Bougainville by all the looks of this statement you work him now all by giving support long end. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Member for Central Bougainville.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Me joining Molnapla, honorable members long, contribute long this debate long this paper where Prime Minister give him long today. First time before me make him talk me like talk thank you through long. Now, two provincial governments. It's New Britain provincial government, Governor Blow, na people blow is New Britain. Na two Governor Blow, Enga, na provincial government. One time, all people blow Enga. Long allow him, all leaders blow Papua New Guinea, na two Bougainville, long go through this process, long consultation. But me joining Molnapla speakers, no thank you Molnapla former prime ministers. Who have been playing big part too long, making sure that we continued, or me prime minister at one time, policy of achieving peace of Bougainville through peaceful means. Without that policy, people know enough long come up one time Bougainville peace agreement. But those former prime ministers, now two former ministers of Bougainville affairs, just to name a few, say Michael Sumari after me, and then say Moyawe, who had been playing big part through long, concluding this Bougainville peace agreement. One time this too, you got former prime ministers who said they playing big part after the signing of the peace agreement. I'm all even playing big part. But let me say that this crisis of Bougainville, and I want to make it clear to the nation. Plan the money said Bougainville crisis was about Panguna. Yes, it will start long Panguna issue. And I've said this many times on this floor of Parliament. This Panguna issue was just an issue, and we surfacing fire is stuff underneath over the time. As I've stated before, this crisis was well started by, Papua New Guinea too. It was by British, not Germany, way back in the 1890s. And now Papua New Guinea has become a victim of somebody else's decision. Long come up on this stage where, Yumi looking plan money losing lives long, not just Bougainvilleans, but Papua New Guineans. But today, I want to thank the Prime Minister, long bring this update the report long progress long implementation of Bougainville Peace Agreement. Awesome, as we have always said, and the Honorable Governor for Southern Islands has also stated, and former Minister for Bougainville Affairs, Honorable Temu, as mentioned this afternoon. Bougainville Peace Agreement was an agreement that came out from many agreements and many understandings. That agreement was discussed everywhere, outside of the country and inside country. And it took many hours and days to actually come up with a peace agreement. So one time this plan, the Bougainville Peace Agreement was signed, and then the amendments to the organic law that gave legal effect to the Bougainville Peace Agreement. Let me come up. So implementation of peace agreement, it was a joint creation by both governments. Not to plug government one time, we must implement him to a peace agreement. Osemna, you look him a process start, and we got 3 pillars inside of peace agreement. Number 1, weapons disposal. Number 2, autonomy. Number 3, referendum. Planning is actually wrong, all these pillars for the Bougainville Peace Agreement. All 3 pillars have been addressed since the signing of the peace agreement. But the disappointing part of the Bougainville Peace Agreement, all people of Bougainville even wish through, we fully implement the peace agreement. So that what? So that the people will see the benefit of having an autonomous arrangement. Time, national government, even continue long, fully engage with the Bougainville law implementing peace agreement, that the autonomous arrangement became unattractive for Bougainvilleans. This must be clear. Ingat plani tok yung target long autonomous arrangement. The people of Bougainville are no longer talking about autonomy. The people of Bougainville are every day talking about the independence. So me like making clear, I've gone around my electorate, Namikisim Tok. What has happened is that this peace agreement is now this issue long referendum. Time referendum will come up. It was supervised by a commission which was led by an independent chairman, who was not a Papua New Guinean or Bougainvillean, but former Prime Minister of Long Island. When it was concluded, the commission reported that this is the report, and it reported that 97.7% was the result that people of Bougainville even decided to come up, only expressing desire of law come up independent. Time me making this announcement, he also announced that the result was a credible result. Hey, me looking was this by-election will come here. But this by-election will be one of the worst elections ever to be conducted in this country. It's going to be worse because all I'm conducting all common roles here. Will not go out yet. You not go out yet. Why I'm bringing this issue is that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thought Papua New Guinea would have learned from the Bougainville referendum. That referendum was, and we only conduct him go through. Now we come up one time to a kind result. Anybody who was a Bougainvillean, maski overseas or inside long, usadino isablo provinces, and even on Mantu is sick, they were catered for by the process that was conducted. Electoral process inside of Papua New Guinea, election process of Papua New Guinea is nowhere closer to what happened long time long referendum of Bougainville. We are always late. So this is the result long referendum. Me like talk about I also support the Prime Minister on the call for sensitivity. Law issue, how you expressing you yet long, but again, it's also very important that other members of Parliament, you expressing you yet. Long representing more people below you. Long talk out one thing below you, one time more people below you. I want to remind every one of us, and former Minister for Bougainville Affairs has also stayed there. And we've been son of this house too, when I was in government. Now we've been told them, result, the people of Bougainville have spoken. Now talk blogol am 97.7%. That only talk. Now we've been told them, suppose you need to finish this crisis, we have to respect the views of the people. Me, and I almost don't like to talk about myself, me fight against more people below me. But who am I? Time 97%, he talk like him independence. My actions in the past is history. Because my view is that the national government has failed me by not fully implementing the peace agreement. So, again, reminding me, there were two UDIs. Number one UDI was not after independence. It was actually before independence, on the 1st of September, 1975. And me talk finish, it was not recognized. And the second UDI was declared in 1990, when the security forces left Bougainville. Now, Bougainville declared Bougainville again independent in May 17th. Now, me overall looking Mosem. Suppose you address him to this issue. I want to forewarn you that there would be another UDI by the people of Bougainville. If we don't handle this one carefully, there are good proposals that have already been put up by certain speakers here. And I want us to actually look at those proposals together as a bipartisan approach to addressing the Bougainville issue. Because me looking at the Bougainville referendum that happened was a referendum that was authorized by the constitution of this country. And people of Bougainville only conducting this right now. Suppose you allowing Bougainville people to go through this referendum, and all of a sudden you deviate from what they want. Then, and by one kind of solution, elections will come up before yet. Number one, people decide law independence before yet, even before Panguna even come up. And then what happened? Australian government one time public in Parliament, House of Assembly only kirap in Panguna mine, and then our landowners were not part of that agreement, except just the land. I mean the independent state of Papua New Guinea one time developer, and that's continuous mistreatment of Bougainvilleans. And then, long 1989 time, this crisis start. After so many attempts by Bougainvilleans or landowners, long addressing issue of Panguna, but why can he refuse to review the agreement? Again, continuous mistreatment of Bougainvilleans. Until Gani Pairap Lopez long government try and then what then happened is government of the day then declared a state of emergency where we victimized him over 20,000 people. So that continued. So suppose you look at this referendum come up. We've got to be very, very sensitive about how we are going to address the issue of the referendum, because what I continue to see now is that online belum plano bongbil balo ko to sema only das belum plano papuni no wari lo amasman ida finish big plan asking Blongol is how best this leadership is going to deal with the issue of self-determination, where all people they decide finish them, they want to be they want Bougainville to be independent. Now, one time this law or Tok come up, and I think the Prime Minister one time, President of Bougainville, sorry, Autonomous Region of Bougainville, only got this relationship which they should continue, because then by keeping alive this process to see a good ending of it, because the total, the main objective of the Bougainville Peace Agreement is to restore total peace to Bougainville and Papua New Guinea. That's the main objective of the big Bougainville Peace Agreement. So one time this paper came up, me too, me and Masosem, Prime Minister, one time Vice Minister, are looking at reforming the NCOVA office or Bougainville Affairs office. Performance long NCOVA office long wabek. Man, suppose enga provincial government no be stopped, the governor no be stopped, it would have been a disaster. Me looking for some officers blow NCOVA time will go on top, they went up like tourists. So me thank him through local member too long, me play long wabek who started even playing big part too long this last time. Without his support, we talking you that those consultations would never happen the way they did. So one time this information we go out, and now long from the Prime Minister, it's good that members are updated on what's happening in the process. Unfortunately, what we're doing now is that this process again, and we know ending crisis this time of Parliament. That's the unfortunate thing about this, the issue of Bougainville. It's now setting everything back to the next Parliament. That is my concern. Now, some problem is now Prime Minister is there, and we'll take him good lead on this issue. What happens if he doesn't come back? Then we start all over again. All the agreements that were communicated with status on certain issues. And we know what this kind support where Bougainville Peace Agreement got through the Constitution. So me like him to solve them. It's unfortunate that it's going to happen in the next Parliament and not this Parliament. But it's good that good preparation should go on, so that we can conclude on the final outcome. Maybe in the next Parliament time, another leadership come, they can conclude what has been prepared by this government. But one time, this time, we like encouraging you, all members, please feel free to long expressing you play it. Don't display issue Bougainville. It's very important, because why? Bougainville has really contributed economically to this country. Bougainville has contributed to reshaping the politics of this country. And I'm seeing another chapter again in the interest of this country and Bougainville, that the Bougainville issue is going to reshape the political structure of this nation. Iga plan di governance oloko tok long provincial autonomy. My experience is that provincial autonomy will not work because of what we have faced in Bougainville. My belief is that regional autonomy will work. Why? Because of two issues. Number one is that you have a province. The problems that you will have is capacity and resource. Those are the two issues that will make sure that your provincial government can sustain the autonomous arrangement. I think we need to look at what Shadow AG has proposed. In total in Papua New Guinea. So one time this talk me encourage him long. Continue to give him good support. Thank you, support now thank you through long people of Papua New Guinea. Support him long. Continue long restoring peace of Bougainville. There is more to do. You got plenty to work him. But thank you to all ministers who are committing themselves, Minister for Lands, Minister for Fisheries, Minister for Agriculture. They have contributed, just to name a few. But thank you to Prime Minister Long. Take him lead now. Your ministers are long time from functions law of Bougainville. One time, just thank you through, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for North Bougainville.
As time long me give him talk, me have a mass through. Long make him display. No long contribute inside long display debate. Now we come up. Thank you, Prime Minister, for all that you have done for the people of Bougainville. And what about you? Time you've been making display. You start him one time, walk about you, long show him straight, you support him all people from Bougainville. Now leadership is very, very important in that case. And Parliament is stop long in. It has a leader. The Prime Minister is the leader. Now long you me, inside long display house, we are also the leaders long different ways where you may represent all the people belong you me. So on behalf of my people of North Bougainville, and the people of Bougainville, me like talk hamamas through, Prime Minister, long you've been making this presentation, now you walk along, promote him, this is like goodness, kindness, he go along people belong Bougainville. Through long all of visit, you've been making. So far, so good. So far. And me play been missing, all the people belong me. You've been missing plenty chances. Through long visit, long leadership, it must go, na visiting all people belong Bougainville. Na mi hamamas, na mi talk thank you. Long making this presentation. Me hamamas. On behalf of the people of Bougainville, long this contribution you work long making. You got JSP, they got consultation process, you work long come up. But it needs the leadership long making display expression. Long show him genuinity. Long all the people, long Bougainville. So presentation below you today. I mean, make him again. And I remind him, people below Bougainville, that the national government cares for them, cares for us. Now it is true that unity that's being fostered, and that is being addressed by the leaders who have been chosen in this house to represent this goodness, this kindness. And we must stop long people long Bougainville. That's why the JSP and we got processes stop inside long and important true. Therefore, there is a need for good leadership. Long make him, now give him opportunity. Long all of people, long make him expression long all. again, the consultation process has come. And we stop inside long this plateau. Long give him opportunity. Long a lot of people through that consultation process, which let me take part. The first one was in Kokopo, in East New Britain. And even got consultation process even come up along this time. Now also Bougainvilleans who's at the representative inside along this house, and only not been fully stopped inside along this until the consultation process took place. Now, and me regard him important through long also involvement belong all members belong Bougainville. Me now we got regional member. Let me stop. Now me play Hamamas true that he has been chosen as the Vice Minister long Bougainville affairs. He contributes much and he will help a lot the Prime Minister to provide the genuinity or the expression by the people of Bougainville. Mihamamas long all kita all the people belong Bougainville. Not two long leader belong all. The President Ismail Toroma. And we got good relationship one time Prime Minister. Na tupla only walk long talk. And it's one big thing that must be kept, and that is the relationship between the two governments. MABG, the national government, belong to me. Only walk long address him, only sala issues, but the leadership which they provide, I'm all, he walk long choose him, long come boom one time, all got a time, long address him, all issue, long people, long me, long Papua New Guinea, na long Bougainville. Tupla government, he joined one time, all get a time, long address him this. So, mi hamamas, na mi, likely contribution below me, inside long here, mi hamamas, through long presentation long Prime Minister today, long him even nap long put him display, also some issue to be addressed. Now all get all line leaders who said now only work long making contribution belong all. Me like talk thank you. Long all get long only make him expressions belong all he come finish long issue belong Bougainville. So any important something. Who said Holonarapla provinces right now. Only got all issue, only can choose him. That has to be from this issue now is stop long Bougainville. You may deal one time. Long pine him common good for our people. So important true long this time, long all of them. You may address him, all this issue, long address him, the common good for our people. I think display me likely short time, long long contribute, na mi hamamas through, na mi talk thank you again, long Prime Minister, na mi talk thank you, long President, long Bougainville too, long display relationship, only build him, na only stop also, long talk, now continue, long or something, he walk long continue. First of all, you can look him long extension, long all the times to 2027 by final outcome of the process will take place. One time dispala. Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. Long presentation below you. Thank you.
Honorable by Honorable Governor of Civic Emissana Piniso. I would remember the last plan and then you may entertain a question before. Honorable Governor of Civic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be brief. Let me first of all commend the Prime Minister. I think and one acknowledgement you may need, give him because he has given the Bougainvilleans a very willing ear. I recall when I sat on that side of the House, raising the Bougainville issue 3 times. And, with much respect to the member for Yalibu Pangi and the former Prime Minister, his approach to Bougainville was actually quite the opposite of what we see from Prime Minister Marape. And for me, I'm a little bit sad standing here after having seen the results of the referendum, because I think to myself, if we had had a more sympathetic Prime Minister earlier on, the outcome of the referendum would have been very, very different, I think. And I note the debate this afternoon from my good friend, the member for Central Bougainville, Honorable Sam Akoitai. And I want to thank him for speaking so plainly. And I think in matters such as this, Mr. Speaker, plenty time yumi Papua New Guinea, yumi sa tok bokis na, yumi sa saitim na raunim na, suaya em sa silip lo namel yumi no sa tatsi. So I want to thank Honorable Akoitai for actually speaking plainly, how the Bougainvilleans are feeling. And I want to also say, Mr. Speaker, that plenty time, people are speaking too, are feeling one kind also more Bougainvilleans. And I want to sort of draw on what Honorable Sepuka Temu has said also. I mean, time blo yumi lo luglu ken lo display union blo Papua New Guinea. It is a union, Mr. Speaker. Many of us were too young to understand what our forefathers were thinking at the time when they put the country together. People are coming halfway to Solia. The issue on Bougainville, have started in 1989. There are many Papua New Guineans today who don't even understand that, Mr. Speaker. Many of them don't even care, but the Bougainvilleans care, because it may affect them all. So it puts this House in a very difficult dilemma, but it actually shows us that there were many, many failures. I mean, lead come no this la result here. One bla failure taso. Have you been come up in 1989? Maybe we shouldn't have sent the forces in, but we did. Maybe we shouldn't have abandoned them when there were those who were actually wanting to stay as part of Papua New Guinea. We withdrew. It come time you signing agreement, we were supposed to, Papua New Guinea government was supposed to show that miplay tok sorena, miplay one bill na like, sing out in Pikini come back. No kat you pusin Pikini go long way more. So, as they say in English, maybe the horse has bolted, Mr. Speaker. And take off finish. There were many opportunities where we could have fixed this. So I want to recognize, there are many people that did a lot of work throughout the years on both sides, and we recognize them, but I have seen a change in the approach with this Prime Minister. And I think on behalf of the people of Isipik, it's only appropriate that I thank him for his efforts and his personal attention to this very vital issue. Because whether we like it or not, the calls for autonomy, the calls for justice, the calls for fairness, they are getting louder, Mr. Speaker. Even just recently, we've seen in court cases, the public is screaming for justice. Despla issue blow justice, na despla issue blow fairness. These are human requirements, Mr. Speaker. I mean, sing out blow people blow Bougainville. So let me sing out blow ngogara Papua New Guineans na. It is the call of people from all over the world. It's a human trait. The human being wants to be treated fairly. The human being wants justice, Mr. Speaker. And our Constitution, if you look at the preamble, it recognizes all of these things. Yet you may not say bianim, Mr. Speaker. You may write him on nice pla tok igoran lo pepata so bianim em nogat. Nice pla peace agreement I come up, tok nice bianim em nogat. We lack the ability to compel ourselves to do the right thing, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I spoke. I hear Honorable Don Polye, who just left, and he spoke about the system. He spoke about good governance. He spoke about accountability, checks and balances. We cannot deny that there were no checks and balances time Kanublo Bougainville gonna capsize. Because it was unbalanced. Even now, our country is precariously sitting on the brink. I mean, unbalanced na stop. You know, in the last government, and I see elements of it in our government, Mr. Speaker. One member emba come emba sing out lokisim something go lilik district blongem. And because that member emi man lo fight in table emi got political value, the government will accede to his request. Never mind the greater community. Na inogat one blood check na balance is stop lo stop him desla member lo kisim. One is something I'm liking. We have seen that time and time again. And when you are on that side, you'll complain about it. When you are on this side, you keep quiet. The arguments over resources again, justice and fairness for our people, Mr. Speaker. I understand that, you know, on our side, Mipla now disadvantage him or line law opposition. Mipla katim DSIP blongol, Mr. Speaker. We use these financial resources to play games with each other, not recognizing that the real people who are hating, emo line is taloples. You mean like Bagrabi Mambla member lo here, so true, you mean Bagrabi Moline Lopez. Now, so long as we continue to play those sorts of games, to show, Trome blame, you go have suit stone, you go come, now you mean make him lo here. There is a group of people that continue to suffer, those that sit outside this house, Mr. Speaker. There needs to be a greater level of maturity amongst our leaders to raise their vision above. In 2009, as part of the Vision 2050 work, Mr. Speaker, we proposed a bicameral house. It wasn't entertained. In that bicameral house, we proposed a Senate-type arrangement where the regional MPs would sit there, Mr. Speaker. Also, we proposed special seats for women. They would also sit in the upper house, Mr. Speaker. That full proposal, the late Sir Barry Holloway na team blongem oli right him must collect him dust sample haplo waiganista. It is a very good proposal. It proposes a restructure and it sets in place the checks and balances that this country has not had in 45 years. If we had good checks and balances, the issue of Bougainville wouldn't have gone as far as it had. No got check na balance. I'm sinalo like lo Prime Minister, one man. Time you Mr. Kam na vote na making Prime Minister lo here, yeah. Prime Minister am come up dictator. A democratically elected dictator. But I want to say about this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, man blaharim talk. This is the reason why me support him. Because when I have issues with the CPIC, he has the time to listen. And I'm sure President Toroma, when he's got issues with Bougainville, this Prime Minister is willing to listen. We cannot pin the hopes of an entire country on the goodness of one man. We need a system that ensures that we get a fair hearing regardless of who is the Prime Minister. We need that, Mr. Speaker. Sabas nogat. Bougainville, first one law about now. Mark my words, other provinces will want to walk. It's not just about the Bougainvilleans and their injustice. It's about the injustice that every Papua New Guinean feels. And we need to fix that. The Bougainvilleans, I'm sure all those not thinking, how by me run him? Country blame me. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? They didn't even think about that. They were only concerned that they were unfairly treated. The Emtasol, Belhat now working work here. And that anger, that resentment is creeping upwards in many parts of our country, Mr. Speaker. And this House needs to do something about it. We have an election next year. Let's not worry about that election. Let's worry about doing things properly so that we prevent these sorts of things from occurring again. If we don't, then we have learned nothing from Bougainville. We have learned absolutely nothing. We need to look at our entire system. As a provincial government, I cannot be held accountable to a department secretary, Mr. Speaker. It's the people of CPIC that should hold me accountable, just like the people of Bougainville should hold their president accountable. But no, Even though we are empowered under the organic law, our secretary administering an act, Mr. Speaker, will actually overpower the operations of a provincial government. There is no check and balance in our system, Mr. Speaker. Even you, Mr. Speaker, apa state asol you tok lo here, nami one bell straight one day you. Lo tok lo you lo. No got support all parliamentary committees. We've disempowered the whole thing. We talk about ombudsman, we were just talking about ICAC. We passed ICAC on this floor. No got check and balance yet. And until we address this issue, you mean not balancing all kind heavy or some time corruption he come inside. Time one man is strong Thomas and bungi mul poro blongemna. They decide to bulldoze their way through parliament like they did in 2011. We can't do much, Mr. Speaker. So we need to go back. I'm 50 years now. Sepuka Temu is right. Before we hit our 50 years, we need to review our system. And don't just go na walk him up or say you may walk him want them DDA act ya. Sue him nothing he go inside lo site. Hangamapi mem na bolt him na talk by walk. You look at the whole system and redesign it and make sure it works. Don't do piecemeal efforts. It's piecemeal efforts that result in the sorts of injustice and the outcry from the people of Bougainville. So, Mr. Speaker, me by stop him close to, me like repeat him Ken. You me lucky also me got kind prime minister, we got bell, the people of Bougainville, na emrod you me be him. But I don't want to leave it to luck, Mr. Speaker. I want a system that guarantees that even if we have one of the biggest prime minister, the system is able to hold that prime minister to account. Right now, we cannot. And we've seen the mudslinging, we've seen all these things happen here. We need a system that stops us from doing that. We need a system that delivers value to our people, that delivers outcomes to our people. We are building roads na yumi paitin broslo road ya. Yumi building all building na paitin broslo building ya. And paitin bros government yumi oklo making ya. We need to build a road that delivers economic benefits to our people. Yumi got 800 million kina war from Silip Stablole. What's it doing? We paid 1.2 billion for motor care. How much return Yumi kisim lo slav wolf? Yumi can just line him all get a nice fancy project na put in triple price blow lanta blongem. That's no people blomibla. Simply because, Mr. Speaker, our system of government, our system of administration has zero checks and balances. And if we are to do something that our children and our grandkids will thank us for in the next generation, it is up to us to build that in, Mr. Speaker. And if we build that in, perhaps the people of Bougainville may change their minds, but without that, they have no guarantees that things are going to change in Papua New Guinea. In fact, none of us have any guarantees that things are going to change. You may all the time by Lulu Tasolo, one powerful minister come inside. Name by running agenda belong him yet. Namibla Olgada Basan spectator. And that will happen in the next parliament and the next parliament until we change the structure and build in a strong parliament, a strong parliamentary system where the legislature can hold the executive to account. And right now, we don't have that, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
The question is that the question be put. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, Senate will move that you may join in Parliament go tomorrow 10 a.m. Thank you.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, Parliament is now adjourned to 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.